So when I think of like long-term care, really I think about it as really professional help. So, I mean, the inevitability is that people will need some sort of professional help to deal with their activities of daily living. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that when we talk about that, and we can kind of define that in a little bit, but your personal independence is super important, and we call that activities of daily living. But if those get compromised, then there could be some challenges. So Gwen, why don't you start off just giving us kind of your take on long-term care? What does that mean to you? And then we can talk a little bit about how we're going to start preparing for this kind of stuff.
Great, and thank you for the opportunity to do that. Long-term care is really about personal and professional care for a person who may not be able to live as independently as they wanted to, and may not be able to perform some of the activities of daily living, like feeding themselves, or being able to get up and go to the bathroom, and getting out of bed and getting in a chair, or continence, or even memory retention. Those are all activities of daily living, and they happen at different phases of our lives. Most people would likely think that long-term care is related to something that happens when you're elderly, but we have the full range, and I think it might be worthwhile just to share some of the ways that we see people in our own neighborhood, sometimes in our own families, and our social circle, that experience the need for long-term care. It could be a 16-year-old who suffered a football injury. It could be a 25-year-old newlywed who suffered brain injuries in an auto accident. It could be a 39-year-old executive who's had a stroke. It could be a 50-year-old executive or business owner with 2 kids and experienced Parkinson's. Or a person who's 59 years old, only child, who's taking care of an 82-year-old mother, and also she gets a diagnosis of breast cancer. So now we have 2 situations that may require long-term care within one family that's a smaller one. So there's a full range of illnesses. There's a number of risks that lead to it. Age is one of them, but of course, a 16-year-old never imagined having a need for long-term care, and that 16-year-old may need care for the next 40 years. So the one thing that I think is helpful in the conversation is to pay attention, to think about those around us that are already experiencing a need for long-term care, and becoming engaged, talking with physicians, talking with advisors about what is that experience like? How likely is it that I may experience it? How likely is it that a parent of mine may experience it? And what are the things that I can do in advance that allow me to give my parents, or me to give for myself, the better care, so that I can live a better life, I can be more independent during that time, and I can also prevent the burden on another family member.
You give some real-world examples, and as a physician, as I hear you describing those scenarios with a 16-year-old, a 25-year-old, et cetera, these are cases that I see all the time. And as a primary care doctor, being on the front lines of everything, this is kind of the bread and butter as you see people as they enter into the healthcare system. And certainly, a lot of times we enter into the system with a disease, with a catastrophic event, or something like that. We don't necessarily seek out health when we're well. We're feeling good. And I used to, so there's a doc that we had a long time ago, and I remember him saying these words. You know, he goes, he's something, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he would say, there are 2 kingdoms of health. There's the kingdom of the well and the kingdom of the sick. And a lot of us are in the well. Sometimes we travel and buy a ticket to this kingdom of the sick, and then we get our return ticket back to the well. But eventually, our journey is a one-way journey. And when he said those kind of words, this was at a conference that I was at years ago, and he said those words, and it just kind of sat with me. And I said, wow, first of all, I'm like, this is a medical conference, and we're talking very, very philosophically on this one, because there's so many ways I can look at that as we approach our lives, but it made me kind of reflect on myself, and not only my own personal health, but also those of the people that we're trying to take care of. And so, but this is super important, and those examples that you give strike a tone. The